Hi, everybody. My name is Tessa Pardon, and I am actually a current freshman at Penn State University, majoring in criminology and poli-sci, both Bachelor of Arts. And I'm actually on campus right now. So what you see behind me is my dorm room. I started early for summer. Nice to meet you all.
Awesome. Welcome. Brandon, how about you?
Hey y'all, my name is Brandon. I'm a rising sophomore at Georgetown University studying international political economy.
Sounds fun. Abby.
Hi everyone, my name is Abby and I'm a freshman, same grade as Tessa, and I'm studying business at UMich Ross and then also possibly UX design.
All right. And Lonnie, take us away.
Hi, my name is Lonnie. I'm a rising sophomore at Luther College. I am pursuing a major in music with a double minor in Spanish and linguistics.
Sweet. So yeah, we got a cool, pretty well-rounded group. Tessa, let's start off with you again. What made you pick your major?
So my major was more of a personal decision. I'm from Seattle, Washington, which is, as some of you may know, the home of Ted Bundy. And I had a volleyball coach who was actually the head on a really, really famous FBI case called the D.B. Cooper case. And I went from there, decided that I wanted to go to law school. And I just really feel passionately about criminology and political science.
Awesome. Brandon?
Yeah, I picked international political economy, I think because I guess kind of like process of elimination to me. We have like 6, 7 majors within my school, and the other one's just like, so I think like international economics is just like a bunch of qualitative work. Regional comparative studies like limits you to a specific region. And to me, I kind of wanted like a broader major that included elements of economics, international relations, and political science. And so for me, it felt like the right fit after going through a few of the core courses and talking to people within that major.
All right. Abby?
For me, I'm super interested in tech as well as business. So I think that's pretty popular among students now. And the reason why I chose business is throughout high school, I participated in DECA. So some of you guys might know DECA is a business club. And one of my favorite activities was doing marketing, case studies in DECA and stuff like that. And then I also had this creative side of tech with me where I did design. So I put those together and I thought that marketing was probably the best fit for me. And at my school, we have a lot of flexibility in adding minors and majors. So I know that if I want to do some sort of tech, I also have that to rely on.
Cool. Lonnie?
I chose music just because it's always been my passion. Like, it's just my favorite thing to do ever. It was just always my favorite class in high school. And then I chose my minors because I took Spanish all throughout high school. I came in with a bunch of college credits, so the minor was just a really easy thing to do. And I've always been interested in linguistics, and I think that those things can combine in a really interesting way as I continue into my college career and maybe do research and combine those areas. So I like learning about different things and how they're interdisciplinary and so on and so forth.
Cool. We'll let Brandon start with these next few questions. What is your current workload like, and what is the most challenging part of your major?
It's a great question, or a great set of questions. So the first question, what is like my workload like? I think it's not too bad. A lot of reading. I did not expect to, I guess, go through so many PDFs day after day, but that's just kind of how it is as a social sciences major in general, I'd say. And then in terms of like my major, I think was the second question, I'd say in general, I think for me, at least at my school, like most of your upper level, like major only classes kind of come junior and senior year. So I wouldn't say I have the most experience with a lot of those courses, but to me, from what I've heard, it's like a really great experience being with like 15 other students that are all in your major. They're all kind of like taking these kinds of similar classes that are really for your interests. So even though like my major is pretty broad, like if you want to go into international development, you can kind of take that as a track within the major. And so I think that it affords a lot of opportunities kind of down the line.
Awesome. Tessa, I know you are taking a summer session. What is your workload like?
So the beauty of the summer session for me is I got to pick basically my two classes, one of which being a gen ed and the other one which being a more higher level thinking specified to my major. And that's my favorite class. It's actually international relations, peace and conflict. And there is a ton of reading because we are learning things like the ethics of war, the ethics of violence, the morality of international relations, and how wars are conducted, won, fought, and lost. So it's a lot of reading. Currently, it's a lot of philosophy, which I'm a big fan of. We're reading things like Kant, Nietzsche, and a lot of historical texts that are pretty dense. But my other class is a gen ed. It's called Communications 100, and everything is assessed through speeches. So for me, I'm not a huge fan of public speaking, but it hasn't been impossible. So I'm loving both my classes, but they are a pretty good amount of work.
Cool. And Lonnie, how about you?
The music major is kind of weird in that the coursework itself isn't terrible, except for music theory, which is like the worst. But once you get through it, it's fine. The hardest part about the music major is the whole like daily practice thing, because so much of my time is just spent in a practice room alone, preparing for lessons, recitals, seminars, so on and so forth. So in that sense, it's a lot of discipline. In terms of classes for like Spanish and linguistics, I have found my courses to be just like any other humanities course. I mean, reading and writing and just applying those concepts to like other concepts within the scope of like the general, like, for example, like linguistics, like how a lot of those different things work together, so on and so forth. So I don't like, I find my coursework to be lighter just because it's a lot of like outside of like project individual development work, especially with music, and then also with Spanish because you have to work on yourself a lot. So yeah.
Awesome. And Abby, I know you're an incoming freshman, but what have you heard about what your workload's going to be like?
Yeah, great question. So for me, I think a lot of my courses are more project-based. So there's a lot more outside work to do. And I think the difference between college and high school courses is the fact that college courses, they kind of have this structure where you have the big lecture section and afterwards you have discussion sections. So in that sense, your work is kind of split up in there. And then I also know that in my school, at least for Raw School of Business, we do not have classes on Fridays. So kind of recruiting people to come to this college, but I think in that sense there are definitely a little bit less work in the business major. So that's that. But there's also a lot of clubs that business majors do attend.
Yeah, I also was a business major and I love not having classes on Fridays. Although in your junior and senior classes, you do have to dress up in like business wear to class, which is not exciting, especially in Texas in the heat. But Tessa, you mentioned like one of your classes was your grade on your speeches. For everyone else, so we can start with the brains. I'm interested to see if there's anything like specific to your major that you're graded on that might be different from other classes.
Not so far, but most of my speeches so far, I've got to pick what I have spoken about. So for my first speech, I actually talked about the big tech industry and how we're all being corrupted by social media. So I do get to kind of pick my own battles there. But so far, we haven't done much major specific work except for that poli-sci class, which has been everything related to my major.
Cool. And Brandon?
I've had some unique professors, I'll say. Like we're required to take a freshman pro seminar. I had one professor who just like never handed back paper grades. So whatever score we got was just her kind of determination of progress. But to be fair, I was like one of the last students to register. So like it's not like everyone faced this fate. Other than that, I've had some, I guess, like unique structures where like some classes we have like a presentation that makes up 15% of your grade. And then like the rest is papers. I think with online classes, we had a unique format where we signed up for like a 10-minute slot with a professor and he would test us verbally. That was pretty intimidating, but it ended up not being so bad compared to like a timed writing. So it was just articulating it out loud. But yeah.
Cool. And Lonnie, I'm assuming there's a lot of music stuff and playing.
Oh God, yeah. I won't bore everyone with like all the details, but I mean, one of my classes is ear training where the entire time, like for finals, they just give you a piece of music and you just have to sing it, like nothing else. Like you just have to be able to produce it, or vice versa, where they play something and you have to be able to notate it. And that's incredibly difficult and very stressful. We also have juries every semester where we have to present for like 5 or 6 members of our faculty for our area. So I'm a cellist, so I present for the string faculty, like the piece that I've been working on all semester. And from that one performance, I am graded, which is super stressful. They can also decide that I'm not fit to continue the major at any point in juries. So that's terrifying. Juries also qualify you for junior and senior recitals, which you have to give. You have to attend so many recitals, you have to participate in so many ensembles. So that's a lot. But yeah, for my other classes, similarly, like for instead of final tests, I have had projects and presentations instead, which I prefer. I'm not a huge test taker, but yeah, the music stuff can be a lot. It's very overwhelming.
I bet, especially going into the jury knowing that they can just kick you out at any moment. That's stressful. That's stressful. Cool. Well, I'm kind of switching gears to the more career side of things. When you were picking your major, what are some of the career paths that you were looking into? We'll start with Abby this time.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, as you guys probably know, the business major is very broad in a sense. So you have a lot of different pathways you can go towards. I know a lot of people might think of like investment banking, consulting as the first ones. But for me, I think I'm more of a qualitative person rather than quantitative, and quantitative meaning like more the investment banking finance sides. So for me, I kind of went in, as I said earlier, kind of interested in business and tech. So for me, I kind of saw like product management and product marketing management or brand management or something like creative designers on that aspect. And I think being a business major allows me to understand the works of the business, and then also taking like a CS minor or design also helps me in the technical aspect. So I think putting those together would be really helpful for me in my career.
Cool. Brandon?
Yeah, I think honestly, there are so many paths that can kind of emerge from my major. Like we had an alumni come back to campus, I think in June, who's now a sitting US Senator. John Ossoff was international political economy major. So like that's one path if you want to go into public service. But also plenty of people end up going the law school route. Some people actually make the jump to like STEM and they end up working. Like we have a science, technology, and international affairs kind of track. And so some people end up working kind of in the intersection between social sciences and science. And so I'd say like you're not really locked in anywhere. You can kind of decide where you want to go to. We have plenty of students who like think they're going to go into law school their freshman year. And then by the time they graduate, like they're gunning for like the PhD professor route.
Interesting. Lonnie, what about you?
It's always what are you going to do with a degree in music, blah, blah, blah. Like I get that all the time, especially from my parents. And the thing is that I'm not completely decided yet, but there's a lot of things that I can do. I mean, I can perform and like be a freelance performer, and like maybe that's not steady, but it is an option. I can open up a studio and give lessons. I'm really interested in going to grad school and studying music as like a researcher and a writer and teaching at a collegiate level. So that's always a possibility. Or maybe continuing that with linguistics or Spanish. Those are also possibilities. So I just like that with a degree in music, it is actually pretty broad. So I do actually have a lot of options as I decide where I want to go in the future. So.
Cool. Tessa?
So this is interesting for me because I originally wanted to go into exclusively criminology, specifically profiling and criminal psychology. And after some discussion with professionals in the field, I thought I should leave my paths open, and it ended up kind of fostering a passion for law and legal studies. So right now I'm definitely looking at law school, if not, as Brandon said, if I end up as a PhD professor, totally happy with that. I'm going to leave my options kind of open. But I've always kind of had a passion for that. And a lot of political science majors are aspiring to law school. I think it's the single most recruited major to law schools is going to be poli-sci. And right under it is psychology, philosophy, criminology, the works. But right now I'm gunning for law school. There's a lot of open area for me to kind of explore my interests. Optimally, I want to work with the Innocence Project in the long term. It is a lofty goal, but for those of you who know what it is, that's what I'm aiming for. And I would love to also be a consultant for psychological counseling in the prison system, which kind of goes hand in hand with government work, which is also a possibility.
Yeah, I think I'm a business student, or I guess was a business student rather. And I think it's scarier when you are majoring in something that is so broad, just because there's so much opportunity, and it makes the job hunt harder just because there's not like one thing that you can go after. I know that a lot of you guys are kind of on the early end of your college career, but are there like internships that are like required for your major? We can start with Brandon.
I think location definitely is a big factor and the reason why so many students end up pursuing an internship. So like being, I don't know, like 30 minutes from the capital and being so close to everything happening in Washington, I think like people end up thinking, oh, if I don't get a job on the Hill or in Congress, or if I don't end up working for some like think tank or economics institute, for instance, that I won't be getting the full college experience. But I would say that there are still people who end up like not going that route. Maybe they need to work for other reasons because unfortunately, a lot of jobs in the social sciences field are unpaid. I think almost like most of my friends working for like the government are working like 20, 30 hours unpaid. And so because it's kind of a disadvantage for first generation or low income students, some students don't end up going that route, but I wouldn't say that that necessarily puts them at a disadvantage because within the course load, you get like kind of experiential learning opportunities. You get the possibility to like do research and things like that. So even though internships are kind of encouraged, and I'd say like a large majority of students do pursue that route, you can still do great in social sciences or in general without an internship.
Awesome. Abby, what have you heard as you're preparing to go?
Yeah, I would second Brandon's statement that you don't have to do like an internship. And I think a lot of the skills learned through classes are definitely applicable to like future careers. And I think the most important thing is like experience. So even like an on-campus job that's not necessarily tailored to your major will definitely give you experience in different areas. So like for me, I work at Chipotle. So I think like just working at these fast food places definitely help you like earn a lot of different skills that you might not necessarily think is for like a business major or for an XYZ major, but I think they definitely do apply based on this like experiences that you've gained and the different skills that you gain through the experience. But talking more about internships in the business major, I would say that a lot of them are mainly for upperclassmen and sometimes sophomores. So I guess first years, as people in my network, I guess they don't really get internships. But I think like a lot of people do work with nonprofits locally, so not a lot of big corporate places. And I think that's also like something to consider if you want to work at a startup or a nonprofit or a corporate business. And I think there's just a lot of flexibility in that area. And especially talking about how broad business is, you definitely have a lot of different paths to go to, whether it's like a consulting internship or a tech internship. So there are lots of different industries to look and search from.
Lonnie?
So for music specifically, it's a little bit different. There are internships that you can do. They're just harder to find. As Brendan was saying, they're often unpaid. So you just kind of have to decide like what's worth your time. I would say like the equivalent for internships for like music performance students would be doing things like competitions and festivals in the summer, because that gives you experience in networking, and so on and so forth, and you learn and gain new knowledge. The only downside is that not only are those unpaid, but sometimes those cost money. So that's kind of frustrating. But yeah, it's definitely possible to do internships in music, especially if you're going into production, or I mean, if you're doing music education, obviously you'll be doing student teaching and you'll gain experience that way. But as a performer, there aren't really internships, especially not with symphonies and opera houses. If you can find one, take it. Like those are super few and far between. So I don't know. It's just a little bit different.
Tessa?
So we actually have at Penn State a guy on campus who is famous for finding people internships. And by famous, I mean he has an Instagram with like 10,000 followers. People pull him aside on the street, and he runs his own department to help people find internships. I am obviously working now and I love the Fiveable internship program, but it has next to nothing to do with my major. Fiveable definitely operates more on the business side of things, which I've typically not had an interest to, but I love working here. Prior to this, I actually worked at Starbucks for almost 2 years, and it was an incredible learning experience. So I would urge all of you to maybe before college even give a job like that or a job like Abby's at Chipotle a really good try because you can learn a lot of valuable lessons. But finding an internship as relevant to my major right now is kind of difficult because it's going to be a long path for me, and law school students normally get those really high powered internships. So it's not something I'm going to be looking at for the next probably year, 2 years maybe. But that I will be looking for other internships about that accompany things I'm passionate about, like Fiveable.
Yeah, so when I was in college, I did a restaurant management internship at Disney World, which is very different than what I do now. I don't work in hospitality, but when I was interviewing, that internship helped me get my job at Uber, and I was not doing anything related to restaurant management. So obviously, certain schools have stronger programs specific, to majors. How much of, when you were picking schools, how much of how strong their program was determined like you going to that school? We can start with Lonnie. I think you'll have a good answer for this one.
Yeah, no, for sure. So when I was touring schools, I mean, I knew I wanted to stay in the Midwest. That's where I'm from. And so I was looking at some of these smaller schools that were known for their music programs. And a lot of people recommended that I looked at Luther because they are well known. Like they have 5 choirs, one of which tours internationally. Every year they put on this production called Christmas at Luther, where it's a combined like choir and orchestra concert. And one year they won an Emmy for it, like just insane talent. And I saw it my senior year and I just was like, yes, this is the school I want to go to. At the time I was considering music education, and their music education program is just unmatched. And I just loved the professors, the programs, the opportunities that Luther provides for its students. My junior year, I'll be able to do a residency in Vienna for a month and play in all the big concert halls. Whereas some of the other schools I was looking at, like, did a tour of Wisconsin. And I was like, that's great and all, but I think I want to go to Vienna. So yeah, I would definitely say look at some of the opportunities that these schools have to offer for you in your specific programs, because it really will like make or break your college experience, your career opportunities, so on and so forth. So yeah.
Awesome. Abby, I'm interested to hear from you because I know business is every business school kind of focuses on a certain part of business. What was driving your decision?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, I think picking colleges to apply to and attend really goes back to those like needs and wants. So I think it's in the college handbook. So little promo for that. But anyways, I'd say that for me, like I really wanted somewhere that would have experiential learning opportunities. And then also somewhere that had flexibility, since I'm also interested in the tech side of things. So for me, Michigan was just the best school that offered me like the flexibility that I wanted. So taking double majors, minors, and then also having credits for APs. And they also have this program called the Real Program, where each year is kind of a like experiential learning experience on a different field. So investing like in financial areas, and then startups, so entrepreneurship. And I just think I just really wanted to deep dive in different areas. And I think the other places that I applied to and was accepted into, I think they just had a stronger focus in a different area that perhaps I didn't want, such as some had them in the financial area and some in the more like management area. So I think for me, it really just came down to having that flexibility for me, especially being someone who's super indecisive. I would say that like something that's pretty general is what I was looking for. And also I live in Michigan, so I really wanted somewhere close to home. Just as Lonnie said, staying in the Midwest. I think that's something that some people might want, some people might want to go far away. So I think ultimately it does depend on your needs, and it's really all about fit rather than prestige.
Tessa, what about you?
So definitely my major was a really, really big pull getting me to apply to the schools I did. I actually applied to a whole bunch of schools 4 or 5 of which were in the top 10 for criminology. Penn State is one of the top 5 schools. I believe it's number 3 right now. And I'm actually about to answer a question from an attendee. I did not even get to tour any of the East Coast schools at all. Last time I was on the East Coast, I was probably 10 years old. And I kind of had to go in pretty blind. But it ended up being a great decision because of those virtual tours that they offered over COVID. But knowing that they were really good for my chosen major was definitely a very big pull, especially because Penn State was competing at schools like Miami, which has a beautiful location, Maryland, Purdue, which are really, really well-renowned schools for other areas of study. Penn State also has a absolutely incredible business school. So if I ever wanted to switch majors, that was a pretty big draw for me. Because my family is mostly business. And if I ever wanted to go into that arena, graduating with a degree from the Smeal Business College is a really big deal. But because I didn't get to visit anything live, attended all the virtual tours, said, okay, they're really good for my major. They're really pretty. I like the location, and just went for it. And I don't regret a thing.
What about you, Brandon?
Yeah, I think that for me at least, like we have like a dedicated international relations school. It's the School of Foreign Service. And so what I've often heard around campus is like, don't get a master's in foreign service at Georgetown if you've already done the bachelor's, because it's just like the same professors just teaching things kind of at an accelerated pace in the master's program. So to me, that like idea of like grounding undergrads and like things that might be even covered in like a master's program was really interesting to me. But also just the opportunities. Like I think, I mean, this isn't really serious, but like we have like I think it's called the diplomat ball, and it just happens at like a random MSc in DC like every single year. And so I think like that's one example where like the connections to Washington like within the city itself is really advantageous. And to me, it really made like the college application slash like decision process pretty easy because of like the prime place where like all the action is kind of going on.
Awesome. So thinking about before you went to college, is there anything that you did in high school that kind of prepared you for entering your major? Or now that you're in college, is there something that you wish you started doing earlier on? We can start with Lonnie.
Yeah, so one of the things that I started too late in high school, I was a part of WISO, Wisconsin Youth Symphony Orchestra, which is out of Madison, Wisconsin. And it's a huge program. They have like 5 different orchestras you can audition for. They have chamber groups. And so I auditioned when I was in undergrad in high school, and it ended up not working out because of another extracurricular I did. And then I did their chamber program my senior year. And I wish that I had done WISO more throughout high school, just because it's great experience. It's great networking to meet other strings players. I think just being surrounded by other musicians helps make me a better musician. So I wish I had done that more. But I mean, I did take private lessons all throughout high school. I, performed solos for like our solo ensemble contest every year. I would go to state, so on and so forth. I participated in just about every musical ensemble my school offered. Like seriously, I was in all of them at some point. So I just got super involved so I could decide what exactly I liked and what I didn't. But I wish that I had kind of specialized a little bit earlier, I guess.
Cool. Brandon?
I think my answer is the opposite. I think I wish I had done more like everywhere to kind of figure things out and make it like a lot easier on me later on. So like I think for me, something that I kind of struggled with is like getting hit with very different. Like I would say that my school is pretty like my high school was pretty STEM focused. So like the kind of norm was to take 4 science classes, 4 math classes, etc. Whereas like some of the students at my school like went to kind of more like, I guess I would almost describe it as like a liberal arts college in a high school where they got to like take different courses everywhere. And so like not taking psychology is probably kind of a regret. I think it's really interesting. It's something that I've never gotten really the chance to learn more about. And like now with how our core curriculum is structured, taking psychology would be an elective, which means that then I'd have to like take summer classes to do our actual gen eds. And so I think if you have the opportunity to use electives to like learn more about like what you're interested in high school, that might be beneficial. And to answer the other question, I think like learning how to take notes has been very, very helpful, just like in general. Even though I still would say I'm not too great at that, but it's okay. It's kind of like an improvement process, but starting early on and like learning how to kind of like study in general pretty efficiently is really important, I feel.
What's that?
So I learned a lot of lessons throughout high school. And by the time I was a senior, my focus when I was a freshman had completely changed over those 4 years. I would say going into high school, my biggest mistake was in overloading myself. I, like Brandon, went to a super, super STEM heavy school. It was very much the norm to take 3 to 4 APs a year, if not aim for an IB diploma. And I fell into that trap before we even offered APs. So I took a lot of honors. And I stretched myself too thin, and it ended up affecting my application. Had I not been able to explain it, it definitely would have more. But the things I wished I had started early was definitely working. Actually, I got a job about a quarter of the way through junior year, and it was so beneficial for me. So if you have an opportunity to go outside of the home and work, I would highly recommend you do so. The other thing that I really loved that I did was my extracurricular activities. And this could be different for those other people who applied, but my extracurricular activities had nothing to do with school. Like I played on the volleyball team, I sang in my choir and my select choir. I picked extracurriculars that I actually wanted to take. So my school time was my school time. And outside of school, I was having a lot of fun meeting people, and obviously doing homework as much as possible. But I personally felt like that was one of my best decisions, was to get my stuff done, leave school at school, and focus on the things I actually loved outside of it.
Awesome. Abby?
Yeah, for me, I would echo Brandon's statement about searching for your interest. And I think high school is probably the best time to search for that interest. For me, I came in thinking I was going to be sat on CS. So I took CS classes and stuff like that, but I realized I didn't really like it as much. So I decided to take a marketing class and then do DECA. I think that for me was really influential, and I kind of wish I started that earlier. I kind of wish in like freshman year that I didn't have such a limited mindset in thinking that I wanted to do like computer science and kind of like have that expansive variety. And I think just taking a variety of courses, whether that was psychology, calc, anything like that. And I think those really helped me see like what I was interested in, which ones really piqued my interest, I guess, and seeing like how I learn, which is why I decided to attend a school that had such experiential learning, because I think those are the best ways that I learn as compared to something else. So I think learning the way that you learn as well as finding your interests are the most essential in high school. And then I guess like just doing a bunch of different extracurriculars, beginning early in year, but then avoiding burnout later. So make sure to drop the ones that you don't really like, since I think I ended up joining up too many in my 10th and 11th grade, and then kind of had a little bit of burnout. So I would strongly advise against that. But other than that, really just have fun. And then I think like if you can't take any certain classes or extracurriculars, just search them online. Lots of open source, or not open source, but open courses on like Coursera, EDX, and then also like different careers you might be interested in. I think the internet is definitely a great source for that.
Awesome. So thinking ahead and kind of what you're wanting to do post-college, is there any classes that you are like really looking forward to help get you prepared for that? We can start with Tessa.
So I'll start with 2 of the classes that I actually took in high school that I loved a lot, going back to whoever asked me about my criminology passion. I took some courses in abnormal psychology and social psychology, which were incredible. And I was really lucky that those were offered in my high school. I also took forensics and AP psychology, and those were also great decisions. Currently, I am having a blast in my peace and conflict class, and I'm next semester starting preparations for my honors college application. So I get to take honors international relations and honors English. I'm also taking an astronomy course, which is going to be super interesting, and it fulfills one of my gen ed requirements. But the ones that are related to my major are going to be the honors, international relations, and the English specifically. I'm also looking at taking some philosophy courses that will also be directly related, but I'm so excited about the course load I got to pick for myself. And my professors so far have been absolutely wonderful. Most of them aren't as scary as you think. Some of them are, but yeah, I'm really excited to get rolling in the fall.
Awesome. Lonnie?
For me, it's less about specific classes that I think are going to enhance my major and more so things that I'm getting involved with next year that I'm really looking forward to, because those might really develop into something that I might want to pursue. So for example, we didn't really get to do chamber ensembles, so like small group ensembles last year because of COVID. But next year I'll be a part of a piano trio, so piano, violin, cello. And I get to do that with two of my good friends. And like we get to have coachings with the professor, and that's going to be really fun. That'll be really interesting. I'll learn a lot from that. And then I'm also going to start taking piano lessons again because I've been playing since I was really young, so that I can accompany soloists, either vocalists or instrumentalists, and I can actually make some money off of that too. So that's something I'm really looking forward to, and like that's a potential like career as well. So those two opportunities I'm really looking forward to. I am also taking a phonetics and phonology course for my linguistics minor, and that will be super cool because I'd love to do research on how that affects music, like singing, and stuff like that. So I just am really excited to start seeing how my interests can intertwine and how I can pursue them further.
Cool. Abby, what about you?
Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah. What classes are you looking forward to help get you prepared for your career after?
Okay, yeah, thank you. So I would say that for me, since I'm looking into business in the tech industry, there are certain classes such as AI in business, so artificial intelligence in the business aspect, and then other courses like data science for business analytics. And then one course that I'm specifically looking forward to is brand management and product management. I think those are super interesting and definitely merge business and tech together. Just this is kind of referring to an older question, but as I mentioned earlier about my interest in business and tech, I applied to a lot of other schools as CS, but now like slowly I'm realizing about how CS and business or just business and technology start to merge more and more in the future. So if you have like different interests, I would say like a lot of them do intersect. So don't be scared. Don't feel like picking one means you're losing the other. I think you can definitely have a lot of interdisciplinary opportunities.
Great. Brandon?
Yeah, great question. I think to me, it's probably a mix of like the different like core classes I'm taking now and also like the very major specific courses. I think like we take a senior capstone seminar and we have to write like a thesis before we graduate. And so that should be really interesting to spend like a semester or two like specifically focused on kind of an inquiry. But even like my comparative political studies class I took in the fall was really fantastic. It kind of covered like the core of comparative government and how it works. And it really made me think harder about the world, I guess. And also like you'll start to notice that there is overlap in content in certain courses. And that's always really fun where you're like, hey, I learned about that a few classes ago. And then like it might even show up later on in kind of like career searching. I'd say like even in the internship process for this summer, like I brought up a few things from classes that I thought were like especially pertinent or relevant to answering like an interview question. And you'll find out that like that happens quite often if like you're really picking classes that like interest you at the end of the day.
Sweet. Do you guys have any networking advice while you guys are in college? We can start with Lonnie.
I would say the reason I love my college is because it's so small, so you can become like best friends with your professors. And that's definitely a really good way to do it, especially if they've been teaching there for a really long time, because then they'll know a lot of alum that can help you out. Especially if those alumni have continued into careers that you're interested in, or especially in the case of music, like the music industry is so small, like everyone knows each other. And so the connections that I have just through like one of my professors is insane. So multiplying that by all of my professors is just a great way to get out into the world. And I've also found that it really doesn't hurt to like cold call or like cold email if there's an opportunity that you're interested in. It's kind of scary at first, but like it's a great way to gain connections and experience as well. Just make sure that they like, if you're going to do that, that they are kind of wanting that and that you're not being too overbearing. But I would definitely say like go for it, make connections. Yeah.
What about you, Tessa?
So I would say that our generation lives on social platforms like Instagram and Snapchat, but I would urge all of you to make things like a LinkedIn to really solidify the connections you already have and reach out to those you don't. A lot of big influencers, big hirers in the tech industry, business, especially tech and business, but tons of others are super active on LinkedIn and will respond to you if you ask them questions. The other thing that's kind of contradictory to Lainey is I go to a really large school and I love it, that I can walk outside and I can meet professors. And we actually, for summer, we have a mentorship program that you can kind of get to know. And for my mentorship program, I actually kind of led a workshop on how to create our LinkedIn profiles. So you will get experience with that in college. And I would say there's so much opportunity to network with not only your peers, which is what we're used to, but the adults in your life and the adults in your college. And I would highly recommend getting a LinkedIn presence set up.
Awesome. Brandon?
Yeah, I'd say for me that networking comes in kind of like ebbs and flows. Like for me, I think there were really good opportunities to just like talk to other students and see what they've been kind of up to and asking them how their summer has been, what have they been up to, and then learn, hey, maybe is there an opportunity there in the fall or the spring that maybe they need help with. But also professors, I'll echo like office hours is definitely a place you should go to. It's great. I mean, on Zoom, it's like less intimidating, but also more awkward, or like your professor, like, it's like, hey, I'll be there in 2 minutes. Give me a second. I'm grabbing water. But in real life, like in their office per se, you'll really have good opportunities to learn more about the research they're doing and how you can get more involved. I know like one of my professors, someone was telling me that like, if you really get to know him well, like he will get you an internship or like get you a job post-graduation at where he works, which I think is the Atlantic Council, which is like international relations think tank. So I think that's definitely a place to go to, but also like connect with alumni if you can. Like one way that one of my clubs was like doing outreach was like literally just going through like Georgetown alumni on LinkedIn and like reaching out and seeing if they could like speak at one of our events, if they'd be down to have like a 5-10 minute coffee chat or Zoom call with like undergrads about what their work is and whether they have any opportunities maybe down the line. And I think those are definitely different ways that you can like network and learn more about what's going on kind of outside of campus.
Awesome.
For me, okay, I think you froze, but I think you got me, so I'm just gonna go ahead. But I would say that definitely connecting with alumni, and then as Tessa said, through LinkedIn, you can find a lot of people who have similar connections to you. And I think just joining a lot of different organizations, just even maybe it's like Fiveable or maybe it's something else. And if you end up putting it on LinkedIn, you search up someone who also is in the Fiveable community, you can often find that. And it's not just Fiveable, but that was just an example. So like even any other organizations you're part of, you can probably search them up, up the people who once were in that organization or are currently in that organization, and having that common connection will help you guys connect together. So I think that's a big thing. And then it also really helps the conversation flow. So that's a big perk of just like trying to see like where you're interested in. Not only do you get, I mean, by joining it like an organization, you not only get to like explore your interests, but you also get to find a community and a network.
Awesome. To kind of close this out, what is the biggest piece of advice you'd give to someone that's wanting to choose your major when they're starting college? Lonnie, we'll go with you.
The biggest piece of advice that I can give is that it's okay to fail because you're probably going to, and that like you have to fail to succeed. You know, like the no's are just going to be exponentially bigger than the yeses. And that's really hard sometimes, but you just have to keep going. I cannot tell you how many times I would walk into my friend's room crying, say I'm going to change my major, and they just looked at me and they're like, no, you're not. So it just, and I think that applies to a lot of majors too, you know, like you're going to fail a test or you're not going to get the job or you're just going to feel imposter syndrome or inferior or like you're not good enough. But really, you just have to keep going because you have to go through the bad, hard, difficult times to really reach your goal.
Awesome. Brandon?
I'd say that the number one piece of advice I'd give for people just like thinking about their majors and what they want to pursue is that you're not like, how do I say this? It's not like you're speaking into a crystal ball and like what you choose is like your destiny or like what you're manifesting for the long term. Like things end up changing. There are people like, I met this really interesting speaker who was like, yeah, I was like a Russian major and then I started learning French in grad school and now I speak Arabic on the daily. And I was like, yo, that's really cool. So like it's definitely not like set in stone and there's still so much flexibility outside of your major classes. Like your junior and senior year, if you have time, there might be the opportunity to work part-time or like do things that are not specific to education. And so like you're not ever locked in and don't feel like you're that restricted.
Awesome. Abby?
Yeah, so for me, I actually applied to some schools as CS and some schools as business, as I said. So I think if you're like interested in any of those, like just try out different opportunities to see that if you're interested in it. So for me, I joined a lot of hackathons. I think those were really helpful. And if you're in the Fiveable community, I'd suggest joining the Makeathon. It could definitely help you see if you're interested. And I think just because of how broad business is, just noticing if you're interested in any certain aspect in it. So for where I'm going to UMich, so there's just a general business major. There's no like specific like marketing management. So that could be something that you would look into when you're applying to colleges. But overall, I would just say doing different activities and seeing where your interest lies and like what is the activity or area where you can just spend an endless amount of time and time just passes by like really fast.
Cool. Tessa?
I would say that my number one piece of advice would probably be if all of your friends say they know what they're doing in their lives, they're lying to you. Sometimes it can sound like all of your friends, all of the people around you know exactly what they're going to school for and exactly what they want to do with their lives. But they're honestly, a lot of them are going to be wrong. The odds you change your major, I think, are over 50%. And if you go in with this absolute dead set mindset of this is what I'm doing, you might end up in a career that you don't want to be in. So I would say keep your options open. That was a big proponent of me choosing a large school, was that if I wanted to change my major, I could change it to things like agriculture, turf management, and ice cream studies. I'm not kidding. Ben and Jerry went here. But that was kind of a big draw for me. And it can be really, really comforting to kind of pick one thing and stay with it, but it could end up hurting you in the long run. So kind of explore your ideas, figure out what you want to do. But if you don't know what you want to do until your junior or senior year of college, that's okay. And I have friends who are going into really, really cool schools like Cornell, University of Denver, UC Boulder, even NYU and UC Berkeley that are going in completely undecided. So don't feel stressed at all about picking a major.
Nice. Cool. Well, before we wrap it up, I know you guys have been throwing some questions in the Q&A already, but is there anything else or any other topics that we haven't talked about that you guys would want an answer to? Feel free to put it in the chat or in the Q&A box. We also have 2 more events this week. We have a first generation event on Wednesday, I think at 4 p.m. Central. And then we have an event with one of our partners, College Eyes, on Thursday. So if you haven't already gotten your pass for this week, super suggest to get it. They're going to be awesome. Give you guys a few more minutes to submit questions. Or any parting words from our panelists.
I could chime in here and say that this whole process is so daunting. I know it can be really scary, especially going into this as like a freshman or a sophomore, but I promise you, you can do it and you are going to end up where you're meant to be. And I know that sounds cheesy, but as someone who didn't think she was going to have many options going into these applications, you will have more than you think. And you're going to have such an amazing time in college. You just gotta get through the hard part and then you're in the clear. So I know you guys are all going to do amazing.
Also, you're smarter than you think you are. You're worth more than you think you are. Like, stop with that self-deprecating talk. We all do it. I'm guilty of it, but you have to be kind to yourself. You have to. You're just going to be miserable. You're going to be like, why am I here? What am I doing? It's normal to feel like your life is insane, but just remember that you are where you are for a reason. And I mean, as Tessa was saying, you're gonna end up where you're meant to be. Like, you are qualified, you are enough, you always have been, and you always will be.
I love that statement so much. So I would say that definitely listen to your heart, and just really analyze like where you're interested in. And really, you don't have to have it all figured out going into your first year. And when you apply to colleges, you might actually realize that a lot of colleges are on the application, it says like your top 3 interested majors or maybe top 5 majors. And with that being said, you do have a lot of options. And going into the college application process, I would say that the most like the worst part of it is feeling alone, as Tessa kind of said, and then also just feeling like you're doing this on your own. And with that being said, definitely join the Discord community, and I think this program will definitely be really helpful. And for me, I just thought that like having an online community last year, especially during the peak of COVID, was super helpful, and just having people to just like vent to, ask questions. So definitely find your community, have a community to lean on, and yeah, you got this.
Yeah, I echo what everyone said pretty much. I think, sometimes you get into the habit of kind of like, before you even get to where you want to go, you already start feeling like an imposter. You're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe I'm not so much qualified. But at the end of the day, remember that, you are who you are and that can't change. And that is what really should speak for itself. I know that sounds kind of vague, but like essentially what Lonnie said is what I would like echo 10,000%, that it's going to work out. People love to doom spiral and kind of get into this like headspace where things don't feel great, but you will always recover. You'll recover 10 times better than you were previously. And once, you finish submitting all your applications, committing to your school, going on campus for the first time, you will be happy. And just kind of think about that continually in the process. It'll make you feel better.
Awesome. Well, huge thank you to our panelists. You guys are awesome. And thank you guys so much for joining our first event. Like I said, we have 2 more later this week. And if you haven't done so already, I would highly recommend that you join our college program Discord. I think there's like 8 or 9 different free events that we have planned for the summer. And with that, I will let you guys go about your day. Thank you guys so much.